what's up YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a part 2 of my 2 cent Switch gaming video where I take a look at this week, where I took a look at E3 2018. Now, part 1 I talked about some of the games that caught my interest, mostly ranging from Sony to some third-party games. For this one, we're going to be taking a look at what Nintendo had to offer for this year's E3. But if you're interested in part 1, I'll have a link in the description. You can check it out. And if you're interested in seeing Nintendo's E3 2018 Direct as well, again, that will also be in the description as well. So why don't we get started? And we'll get started with the first part, which is what I did like. So as far as what I did like, what Nintendo showed during their E3 2018 Direct, we'll start off with the first one, and that is Fire Emblem Three Houses. So now, last year, when Nintendo did sort of a Fire Emblem Direct, they announced, 3 Fire Emblem games. The Fire Emblem Echoes, Fire Emblem Heroes for the mobile devices, and Fire Emblem Warriors, which I view that as far as Nintendo Warrior games, I feel that one edges out Hyrule Warriors, but just by a teeny bit. But one of the announcements they made during that Direct was the announcement of a brand new Fire Emblem game. And, here he is. And here it is, though. And based on the announcement that was made about Fire Emblem, it looks pretty much the same, though, but we'll have to wait until they tell us more about gameplay. It does look like you're going to be moving, it does look like, based on what was shown, though, it looks like you're going to be moving more than just, like one unit. Like, for example, when you move your character, you move also, like, their army and all that stuff. So I'm a little curious how that's going to play out, if that's how it is going to play out, though. One thing I do want to point out that they did announce is that the game is a 2019 release date. Now, some people are a little bit upset about this, especially considering the fact that they announced that the game was going to come out in 2018, and in some degree I can understand that. So on one hand, I can understand people being upset about it. On the other hand, by releasing it in 2019, it doesn't have to compete against Smash Brothers, and considering that Smash Brothers is basically something that a game that is normally used to push people to buy, like a Nintendo system and all, chances are it would have probably been buried by Smash Brothers. So by releasing it in 2019, which I keep hearing is a spring 2019, though, I think this probably was a smart move, because then that gives it doesn't have any competition against any other Nintendo games or so forth. So a little disappointed it got delayed, but I can see the advantage of it, though. So I am curious to see how Fire Emblem Three Houses work, and I'm also curious to see if they're going to use some of the features they have used in some of the current Fire Emblem games, such as, ranging from having a casual mode to the whole marriage system and all that stuff. So I'm a little curious to see how that's going to play out. The next one, of course, is basically the announcement of Xenoblade Chronicles DLC, and I think from what we're getting is a battle mode and supposedly a brand new story. Based on what I've seen so far, it looks like it's a prequel before the events of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and honestly, I'm down with that. More DLCs for the game, the better, to basically give more life to that game and so forth. So hopefully when it comes out, I think it comes out this month, it does well enough, and hopefully this will encourage Monolith Software to possibly maybe bring Xenoblade Chronicles X over to the Nintendo Switch. Although I would be open if they were to do a Xenoblade Chronicles 3, or maybe create a whole new game out of the Xenoblade Chronicles series, to be exact. So, but overall, definitely liked, did enjoy the showing of the DLCs for Xenoblade Chronicles 2. The next one, and this one is actually a new game that they showed off, and I think this one first appeared at the beginning of basically the Nintendo E3 Direct, and that, I think, if I'm saying the name correctly, I wrote down, called Daemon, Daemon X Machina. From what I've been hearing, that some people look at it as that it looks like a Armor Core type of a game, which certainly I had never tried Armor Core before, but I would definitely be willing to try this out. I do think the art style is kind of neat. It kind of has a little bit of a sort of a cell shaded kind of art excuse me, cell shaded kind of an art style. So it is a very interesting game and one I'm looking forward to trying that out. My guess is probably it's 2019 for that one, more than likely though. I just don't know when in 2019. I just don't know how far in development that game is, so that is really neat. And last but not least, two games were announced. Two games that at least were announced though that I'm looking forward to trying out. The first one, and this was shown during their E3 2018 software lineup that was part of the Direct, and one of that is Wastelands 2 Director's Cut. That's probably the one I'm looking forward to trying out, more than I could say about Fallout Shelter that they announced for the Nintendo Switch. Not that I have anything against Fallout Shelter. I think as far as a mobile game goes, it's certainly one of the better mobile games out there, but I'd rather go with Wastelanders 2 Director's Cut. I mean, no offense to Fallout Shelter again, but I'd rather see something like Fallout 3 Anniversary Edition or Fallout 4 instead of a mobile game brought over to the Nintendo Switch. But again, that's my opinion. And last but not least, and although this wasn't announced at Nintendo's presentation, I forgot to add this to my last video, it was announced though that a Switch version is happening, and that is supposedly a remake of Tales of Vesperia, Vesperia. Apologize if I'm not saying the name correctly. It's basically the definitive edition. It's the game from Bandai Namco that they also announced for the Nintendo Switch, along with the PS4 and Xbox One. I believe a PC version as well. They also announced, Bandai Namco also announced Dragon Ball Fighter Z. So obviously a lot of people must be happy about that one. So, but in either case, I'm very interested though. I've started to get into the Tales games, and while this may not be like a brand new Tales game or one designed specifically for the Nintendo Switch, nevertheless, the first Tales game we're getting for the Nintendo Switch. Hopefully other games will come to the Nintendo Switch. Maybe we'll get, like I said, maybe we'll get an all-new exclusive one, or maybe they'll port over some of the other ones that have come out, mostly on the PS4, or maybe they'll do a remake of some of the ones that were released on the Wii or the GameCube, for that matter. But overall, we're getting a remake of a Tales game coming to the Nintendo Switch, so that certainly isn't a bad thing at all. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to get to part 2 of what I don't like. Plus, I forgot to mention this in the beginning, I'm going to give you my thoughts about the movies The Incredibles 2 that I saw. So, take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our My 2 Cent Switch game video, the E3 special, part 2, this one focusing on Nintendo. So now that I gave you what I did like from Nintendo's presentation, I'm going to give you what I didn't like about it. And there were really two things, with the second one being probably the biggest one of them all. So why don't we get started with the first one, and that is, while I'm not hugely disappointed that they didn't show this, it still would have been nice if they did show, and that was no Bayonetta 3 or Metroid Prime 4 though. It would have been nice if they would have shown at least, even if it's like early in the development or something like that, it would have been nice if they at least were able to show us some gameplay footage of Bayonetta 3 or Metroid Prime 4. The fact that they did is somewhat of a disappointment. Not something I'm going to lose like entire sleep over. It's just a little bit of a disappointment that they didn't show either Metroid Prime 4 or Bayonetta 3. Not to mention, also Yoshi now has been delayed to 2019 as well, which is also somewhat of a disappointment to hear about that at E3 to be exact. But probably the biggest one, and I think this is going to depend on some people's perspective on this, and that has to be the Smash Brothers part though. And the reason is that towards, sort of like at midpoint during the Nintendo Direct though, they focused squarely on just Smash Brothers, announcing, titled Smash Brothers Ultimate, everybody's here, and so forth. They announced like certain modes and certain stuff, though. It almost came off like it probably would have been better if they just saved that for like a Smash Brothers Direct or anything like that. I mean, it wasn't terrible if you're a diehard Smash Brothers fan or something like that, but unless you are, then you're going to be kind of feel like you're going to be a bit disappointed because you felt like they just focused all their energy on Smash Brothers. They didn't even bother like mentioning other stuff or anything like that. I mean, it almost came to the impression that they were trying to repeat what they did in 2016, where basically they were not in a great position. The Wii U was on its way out, and they focused, excuse me, solely on Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and that may have worked back then, given the position that they were in. I just didn't think it worked this time around, considering the fact that Nintendo is in a better position thanks to the success of the Nintendo Switch and so forth. So, personally, I didn't have a problem with them showing Smash Brothers in the Direct, but I felt like they could have saved some of this stuff for maybe a Smash Brothers Direct specific only, not just waste this E3 presentation and take up the entire Direct focusing on just Smash and everything like that. I'm sure diehard Smash Brothers fans were probably pleased with this, but unless you were a big Smash Brothers fan, you probably were somewhat disappointed with this one. Overall, my takeaway about Nintendo's E3 2018 Direct is this. It's not the worst that they've done. I mean, look at Nintendo's E3 presentation 2008. Let's see, what else? 2013 and 2015. Those were just terrible, with 2008 being the worst of the worst. It's certainly better than what EA and Square Enix showed, which they had their own issues with it, and many viewed EA's as probably the worst of them all. But I honestly felt that this was probably their weakest presentation, though. I'm not saying the games they showed off were terrible. Like I mentioned, what I liked, though, there were certainly some games I enjoyed liking. But unless you're a diehard Smash Brothers fan, it felt like this presentation was just focused on Smash Brothers, and that might have turned some people off. So it's, again, not their worst, but not their strongest, though. Perhaps we'll probably hear more announcements of certain games, maybe in a future Direct. I think many believe they'll do another Direct probably this year, and maybe we'll get surprised like we did last year when the announcement of Doom 2016 coming to the excuse me, Doom 2016 coming to the Nintendo Switch. I mean, that is a possibility. We could get something like that, but overall, again, not their worst Direct, but not their best one either. Okay, before I end this video, I do want to give you my thoughts on the movie The Incredibles 2 that I saw. Now, for those who are curious, this is a sequel to the 2004 Incredibles that was released, and by God, it was a long time for them to do a sequel, though. And honestly, it's good. I mean, it's not like good like, oh, it's great like Avengers Infinity War or good or anything like that. It's an enjoyable Pixar movie, though. I would say that's definitely on my top Pixar movies that I like. There are only really 3 I could think of that I enjoyed, or 2 to be exact. That would be the first Incredibles and WALL-E. That WALL-E remains one of my favorite Pixar movies, though. The story obviously is that, you know, superheroes are still illegal and all that stuff, and they're trying to continue to change all that to make being a superhero legal again and all that. Basically, the rundown is that it's more the same, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, though. If you like the first one, you'll probably like this one. If you didn't like the first one, the sequel, I don't feel will change your opinion about it, though. But overall, I enjoyed it, but it's mostly a matinee for this one. So at least that's how I see it, to be exact. Okay, this concludes this My 2 Cent video, part 2, on the focus on directly on Nintendo and what they show off at E3. And again, these are my opinion, but what are yours? What are your thoughts about what Nintendo did at E3 2018? Do you think they had a good presentation? Do you think they had a bad presentation? Do you think it was right for them to focus heavily on Smash Bros. Ultimate? Or do you feel like they focused way too much during the presentation? Do you think they should have showed up some footage of Bayonetta 3 or Metroid Prime 4, even if it's early in development? Or do you think it was best not to show it off at all? And do you think this was their worst presentation? Do you think it was their best presentation? Or are you with me on it not being the worst, but not being their best? And what are your thoughts about The Incredibles 2? Did you enjoy the movie? Excuse me. Did you enjoy the movie? Did you hate the movie? Did you like the first one and enjoy was going to see the sequel and did you enjoy that as well? Or was it a case of you enjoyed the first one but hated the second one? Or did you just didn't bother to see this one because you didn't enjoy the first one at all? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off on the comment section below. Let me know what you think. I hope you hit that like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also, if you do, don't forget to hit the bell icon to get notifications. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to. And feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You could do it through PayPal me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!